Welcome to the Joanne Avison podcast. A lot of people ask me about the connection between fascia and spirit, and I'm going to share some of the ideas I have around that with you here. Because when we think about spirituality and connecting with our inner selves, we often focus on the mind, on the heart, on the soul. But what if I told you that there's another crucial element that's often been overlooked in some ways, which is essentially our fascia and its role in our spirituality? For example, have you ever felt like you're not quite connecting with your spirituality or your spiritual practice, if you have one, as if it's completely separate from any movement that you do, or as if there's some kind of a disconnect between your body and your mind? What you do and what you sense you should do and what maybe you think you could do. We're not saying it's good or bad, or we don't have any judgments about that. We just notice that there's slightly more to it. They don't always join up. And many of us can have this experience, this feeling. It can be really disheartening and frustrating. You're really not alone. If you feel, sometimes we might describe it as pulled in different directions. It's as if your heart's telling you one thing, your whole body's physically resisting, and your head's saying, yes, but I should do that. That's kind of what I'm calling this disconnect. And traditional views of spirituality often focus on the mind or the heart. But what about the body's role in that? What about this amazing physical vessel that we self-organized as embryos that houses our spiritual essence? We've been led to believe that the mind is the seat of our consciousness and that somehow our emotions reside in our heart. And what about the rest of our body? What if the intricate web of connective tissue that actually surrounds every cell, surrounds every muscle, every organ, and actually has a subtle version of itself inside the cells? So the tubules, the microtubules and the microfilaments inside the cell kind of mimic on a different scale the tubules and filaments surrounding the cells as they organize and communicate with each other. And this is where the fascia comes in. It's a very crucial system that's been hidden in the obvious, or you might say hiding in plain sight. And let me be really clear. Fascia is not some vague, esoteric concept. And whatever arguments and discussions there are about what is and isn't fascia and how it's been taught traditionally and how it's taught classically and how it's taught in the modern contemporary way, it's a very real, tangible part of our anatomy. And yet, despite its importance, it's been overlooked or ignored in discussions on spirituality. So let's dive a bit deeper into the amazing world of fascia, or I prefer to say the fascia matrix, because that's going to have some significance later on when we talk about what that really means to us in physical form. So this incredible system in our bodies is made up of tiny thread-like fibers, and they weave together to form a three-dimensional web. And in one way of describing it, it's also more than that. It's also the glue that holds our bodies together, allowing us to move and allowing us to function. But kind of that's its more obvious role. Underneath the skin, it also forms a phenomenally complex liquid crystal matrix. As I said, we'll go into that a bit more in a minute. But what this gel-like substance can do is vary its shape, its form, and its expression. That means we can change it and it can change us, and we respond to each other, and we're not really separate. Because think about it, if you want to learn to do a particular dance, you become inspired to do that dance, and you find somebody to mimic who will teach you. and you mimic them and then you repeat, and we call that practice. But you kind of got to want to do it in the first place. And so your desire and your actions become congruent. And then the spirit in which you are doing it comes forward. And you find yourself dancing. So this organization changes shape as you practice, but your practice changes its shape. So this is where we start sensing this deep integration of who we are and how we are when we're moving. And when those are congruent, we realize that the fascia plays as important a part in the spirit of how we do things as it does in the functioning of doing those things. So really, it's much more than just a physical structure. It's also deeply connected to our emotional needs and our spiritual experiences. And in fact, research has shown that fascia is highly sensitive to different frequencies, vibrations, emotions, and even our thoughts, because essentially they are frequencies. They are electromagnetic fields of energy moving, and we are energy moving, emotion, energy in motion. And everything in us relies on mobility, motion, motility, all different words for the same thing, depending on what scale it's on. So everything about us has an impact on a scale of subtle to strong through the body. And this means that when we experience stress or strain or trauma or emotional pain, our fascia responds accordingly. It can become a look of being downcast. It can include a frown on our face. It can become an expression of inflammation, and we can make it restricted when we are contorted with pain or distress. But it also works the other way around. When our spirits are lifted, when we smile or walk with a spring in our step, when we greet someone with open arms, when it's as if we are full of light. Have you ever had somebody say that to you? Oh, what's lit you up today? Or I've had someone say to me when I was feeling a little down once, she said, oh, your spark's gone out. It's as if your light's gone out. People notice. And so when our spirits are lifted, the fascia actually responds to that just as readily as when our spirits feel deflated and downcast. So when we cultivate feelings of loving, of compassion, of joy, of wonder, our fascia actually responds in kind, and it allows us to feel more expansive, more open, more ready to receive, and therefore more connected. And this is where the magic happens, because we can tap into this power of the fascia and experience profound shifts in our emotional and our spiritual well-being, because they're often not entirely separate. And we can also discover scientifically from brilliant scientists like Mei-Wan Ho, for example, that fascia actually communicates and intercommunicates through this matrix of our living architecture at the microscopic level, from cell to cell communication as well. Now, I explain all this in some detail in my book, Yoga, Fascia, Anatomy and Movement. I wrote a whole chapter devoted to it called Fascial Architecture, because the fascia expresses throughout our body in different textures. It can be more liquid, it can be more solid-like, it can be more gel-like, it can be more sort of spongy, it can be more tending to stretchiness, it can give, and it can also become hardened and restricted. And we can think about whether there's an element of a kind of spiritual againstness that maybe goes with that sense of restriction. And that's more of a question for you. But just imagine if there really is a bigger correlate than we think with our internal matrix and our external experience. And can we change one with the other? Can we think expansively? Can we let go of againstness? And can that change our physiology? that's really the question when we consider this change in architecture as something we have the power to make a huge difference to, but with subtle things like our thoughts and our feelings and our focus and our energies. And for me personally, working with fascia, which I have done now for 30 years or more, has been a complete game changer. I've experienced profound releases of extraneous tension and trauma, and I've also felt a deep sense of connection to my own spirit and spiritual practice, which those of you who know me know how dear that is to me. And for sure, when I was recovering from the diagnosis of breast cancer that I had 3 years ago, I brought both spiritual exercises and physical micro movement sequences to my daily practice. And it transformed my ability to restore movement and avoid all the usual scar tissue issues of cording and tethering. I mean, really, I couldn't move for several weeks, but I knew what to do, and I knew how subtly I could integrate my spiritual practice and imagine those movements when I couldn't move with my physical practice of seeking to move them through the imagination. So there I was bringing another aspect of what we might call a metaphysical part of us, our imagination, to the physical expression of our fascial architecture. And for me, it was a profoundly spiritual practice of literally praying every day and working with the energy and working with that spiritual awareness as I moved, even if I couldn't move, if that makes sense. But each day I asked the question, what could today bring? And somewhat childlike in manner, I just asked and listened. And nothing surprised me more than the speed at which I got results with minutes of practice a day. I discovered so much about the difference between driving ourselves to peak performance and going within and listening and receiving from the grace that our inner awareness brings to this sense of the fascial matrix when we actually give it permission to inform us. First, we have to believe that it can. And given that I've talked to you in previous podcasts about fascia as a sensory organ, it really bears thinking about how beautifully and subtly it can respond. And I surprised myself at my recovery. It was as if my fascia had become a kind of a gateway to literally higher states of consciousness, which is now what I work with and develop quite a great deal. And it allows me to access a wisdom, a guidance, a grace. And that inspiration of self-awareness comes at a whole new level when you start the journey through the body, recognizing this inner matrix, this internal net, if you like the internet, but it's internal. And it's a level that I can only call spiritual inner awareness, I guess. And the key insight here is really that working with our fascia and through its subtlety can be a powerful way to enhance our spiritual connection. And that doesn't mean we can't enter into elite sports working as athletes, but it does make me think, what about including this aspect in how we do the big stuff, the fast and the furious and the powerful? My spiritual teacher, John Roger, has a beautiful, beautiful phrase. Gentle people have the most courage. They're the most courageous people because they've been tried in the fires of negativity and they've come out purified. It really is something to be gentle in the face of other people's moods, other people's traumas, especially if it's your family and your heart goes out to them and you want to help them. And you find yourself responding physically to that. So imagine that is a frequency moving through your tissue. And so too can we be inspired and excited when something good happens and we share it with someone. And that lifts our spirit. And I have actually found many, many times, many occasions, that by cultivating this subtle awareness, we can naturally release extraneous tension and nurture our fascia to tap into the deeper wisdom of our bodies. We can experience a profound sense of unity and connection with ourselves, with our different ideas, with our archetypal possibilities. Something that completely fascinates me for another podcast, but don't forget to click subscribe, then you'll hear about them when they come through. My next book is about somatic archetypes, and it's, oh my goodness, it's another game changer, because it all comes from this idea of fascia having a role in our congruency, in our ability to be ourselves to our best ability. And in learning that, I think these keys of connection, of self-awareness, of moving spiritual inner awareness, that we discover the fascia is not just some obscure anatomical system separate from the essence of us and who we are. What if it's the vital key to unlocking our fuller spiritual potential, our spiritual connection with each other? We've also considered how traditional views of spirituality often overlook the importance of our physical inner architecture, the fabric of our forming. Think of it as an embryo. You began as a unicellular being, and you self-organized the architecture in order to express yourself as that unique architect. Don't you love knowing that? Oh my goodness, thrills me. And we've also looked at the fascia and the extracellular matrix it is containing and contained by as all there, hidden in the obvious, but full of this potential that perhaps we couldn't have imagined. Is it a surprise that separating our spirit, even if just in our minds, we separate our spirit from the fabric of our form, can lead to those feelings of disconnection and frustration within ourselves and with those around us? It's really worth thinking about. And I just want to thank you for joining me on this little journey, little trip into the world of fascia and spirit connection. And if you've got any thoughts or insights to share, please, please, please leave them in the comments below. And especially if you're interested in exploring more about spirituality, body awareness, and the fabulous fascial matrix that I said I'd talk about more, but I'm going to leave to another episode, because there's a lot to discuss about how this incredible matrix actually works. It's extraordinary, because there's a liquid crystal. Here's the little magic thing I promised you at the end. It's actually like chocolate, because chocolate is a liquid crystal matrix. And for 20 years of my life, I was a chocolatier, and it took 10 more to find out why I have this profound understanding of fascia. I think one of my colleagues said it's because I was up to my elbows in chocolate for 20 years. Can you imagine? I really was. But you can shape a liquid crystal matrix. You can change its shape, you can change its texture, you can change its consistency, and it behaves completely differently. And it's a segue to how we work with movement. But that's for another podcast. I'll go into great detail. So if you're interested in exploring more about that and spirituality and body awareness, please be sure to check out other videos on this topic. Click the subscribe button so that you're first to know about any new episodes. And you can go over to my website, joanneavison.com, where you'll find all sorts of free podcasts, book samples. Got a free chapter of my book that you can have, and loads of other information, as well as details of our world-renowned courses. Don't forget to subscribe and comment, because I just love to hear from you wherever you're from. And I'm super excited. Little PS, little shout out. We've just reached our podcast to 131 countries around the world. That's nearly 85% of the globe. I'm so excited, and I just hope that this kind of adds to the sense that we are actually forming a matrix around the world of connection by listening to each other and listening to ourselves. God bless. Have a great day.